Hi, I'm Olivia Patchell. I'm the Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent for Currituck and Camden counties. And today we're going to talk about mental health in the form of managing stress through physical activity. This is the first in a series of pop-up mental health webinars that we're doing. Our next one will be on mindfulness, and then after that, we will talk about a healthy diet. So if you have any questions, I just want to remind you that you can type those in the chat box if you're watching live on YouTube. If you join us via Zoom, you can type those in the chat pod, and we'll try to get those answered. We are going to share with you the PowerPoints that we go through today. And we also have some other resources. If you need those resources sent to you, we can always send those to you after the recording, and we can link those in the comments on YouTube. So I'll go ahead and get started with a little caveat that today's session is being recorded. If you are utilizing the Zoom feature, just a reminder to cut off your camera if you do not want to be part of the recording. If at any point you have questions utilizing the Zoom feature, you can unmute and chat with us. If, as we move through our presentation, we just encourage you to keep that microphone off. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started just talking about physical activity and why being active is so important. So there's lots of good reasons. On a temporary or on a more immediate basis, there is improvement in sleep and mood. On a long-term basis, there is disease prevention or disease management. On the long-term basis, again, there's stress management, weight management, and current and future mobility. So remember, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So we do encourage you to make sure that you're using those muscles and being active. And then pain management, also on a long-term and sometimes short-term, depending on what type of pain you have. There are a lot of studies that show that rheumatoid arthritis is managed much better when you move those joints rather than keep them still. Some even gout seems to be a little bit better in some people if they talk to their physician and find exercises and movements that help manage that. So today we're going to talk entirely about stress management, but we will have some information for you about the full benefits of physical activity. So before we get started in how to use physical activity as a management for stress, let's talk about the two main types of stress. So the two main types of stress are going to be your positive stress, your eustress, and your negative stress, your de-stress. So your eustress would be something that encourages you to work well or to move forward in a project, like a deadline, sometimes a looming presentation. So some people work well with having a little bit of pressure to complete a task. So a negative stress or a de-stress, there are two types of those: acute stress, so that's periodic stress, and usually acute stress can be addressed with a positive network of people to support you, and you can get through that. Those things would be a breakup or a loss in the family. So typically people can manage through these things with a good support system, maybe the help of professionals. And then the last is a chronic stress, and we call these toxic stresses. And this is without the lack of that support system, or without even the knowledge, maybe that support system doesn't know that these things are going on. That would be abuse, bullying, neglect, and even addiction. So these are going to be things that are going to be harder to negotiate, navigate through life, especially by yourself. So what we do is we put this stress on what's called a stress curve. And you'll see this bell curve starting at the bottom with maybe too little stress, so we're not pressing forward, we're not seeing the benefit of or any reason to complete a task. This could, be something that's on your to-do list that you say you someday maybe to-do list. We don't typically act on those items because we don't have a deadline for those. You'll see as your stress levels increase, you've got the laid back, we've got a deadline, it's a month out, we're not quite ready to, really hit the gas pedal just yet. And then you come up to the top where you get a little bit of fatigue. So we're almost getting to the too much stress. So this may be too many deadlines on top of each other or too many tasks that we've let pile up. And then you get exhaustion as you come down the other side. You may even go into anxiety, panic, or anger. And then at the very bottom here, we have those breakdowns, or maybe you find your coworker in the corner huddling and rocking back and forth. That's where we get too much stress, and that's where we're not productive. So the goal is that we stay kind of to the left of center of that curve, so that we get that right, the optimal. You'll see it says optimal stress level at the bottom, and your performance is pretty high at the top. So we want to try to stay right in that area. And that can be kind of hard to navigate, especially if we are ones who maybe procrastinate or put stuff off, or maybe someone who puts too many things on our plate. So what happens in our body when we get stressed? And this is really important for us to navigate as we move through why physical activity is important. You don't have to remember all the things that are released in the body, or even understand what happens, but basically your brain is sending out a flight or fight response, and it will send that information to your adrenal glands, which are going to send out your adrenaline and your cortisol. And those are going to send messages to your organs, basically dilating your bronchial tube so that you begin to take in more oxygen, because in primal times, we would have to run for our lives maybe, or begin to fight. Your heart rate's going to increase, and your blood's going to start flowing. Your liver's going to begin to turn to create glucose so that you have that energy to fight or run. And then you're going to stop with digestion, because that blood and that energy is going to other functions in the body. And so your heart rate is also, or your blood pressure is also going to begin to elevate. So these are the things that are happening in your body, and you can actually physically feel those if you pay attention. Sometimes it can be in the form of trembling. You can actually feel your heart rate and your breath increase. So this is a great little illustration of how everything moves through the body. Here is a fun fact, or maybe not so fun. Anxiety actually damages your brain. So anxiety is harmful to the brain, but maybe you wonder how. So there's some evidence that shows that individuals who experience anxiety are 48% more likely to develop dementia. And this is due to that cortisol. So the more that we release the cortisol in our body, the more that we're kind of breaking down are kind of damaging our brain. And we actually damage the part of the brain that is involved in memory and complex thinking. So a couple of things to do here is to really work toward minimizing that stress and viewing certain stress as positive. And then another thing to do is to work on your physical activity regimen and your stress management through healthy behaviors. So what happens in your brain when you're physically active? First, endorphins are released, and this is going to dull the sensation of pain. So if there is pain, chronic, you remember that chronic stress maybe is a pain. If there's pain in the body, then you will be able to dull that with your physical activity level. Then serotonin is also released, and this enhances your mood. So this is going to make you happier, just like being outside in the sun. Then dopamine is released, and dopamine is going to improve your focus and motivation and even your learning. So releasing that dopamine is really going to help you process tasks that you need to complete later in the day. And then your norepinephrine is released, improving your intention, your perception, and your motivation. So you have these wonderful feel-good chemicals that are being released in your body that are kind of going to combat those bad hormones, not bad, but those hormones that are released during stress. And we typically call them bad because they just make us feel anxious. And then the good part here is if you are somebody who maybe deals with anxiety, the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain concerned with learning, memory, learning and memory can actually grow in size as you exercise over time. So if you're releasing a lot of cortisol in your body that's damaging your brain, this is a great way to combat that. So you can actually kind of reverse some of that. Now, there isn't any research that says that physical activity prevents diseases such as Alzheimer's or dementia, but it does say that most people who have over their lifetime been physically active are much less likely to have those symptoms later in life. So basically, physical activity brings us back into a sense of balance. Another thing that physical activity does is it allows us to release those built up fight or flight responses. So that cortisol and that adrenaline, we can get rid of that by utilizing it in a form of physical activity. And we'll talk about what are the best forms of physical activity for what at the very end of the presentation. So how can you be physically active? There are tons of ways to be physically active, but the best thing to do is be mindful of how your body is moving throughout the day. So basically building in physical activity within your daily routine. Maybe it's going for a walk in the morning, maybe it's utilizing the stairs instead of an elevator, parking further away from the building, and making sure that you're just involving physical activity throughout the day rather than taking a time set for physical activity if you're starting your physical activity journey. It's also encouraged that you do that mindful physical activity, but that doesn't mean that you have to jump in all at once. Another step is to do something that you enjoy. So maybe running isn't for you. It's definitely not for everybody. Maybe walking is the best thing. I encourage most everyone to try walking, especially if they're new to physical activity. Walking is a great way to be fit and really get out into the outdoors, explore your neighborhood, maybe even make some new friends. And that's really going to increase your serotonin levels and make you a little bit more happy and able to deal with whatever may come. Some other activities that you may enjoy, like hiking or biking or swimming, dancing. Gardening is a great physical activity. So think about activities or hobbies or interests that you have and how you can turn them into some form of physical activity. And then try everything. And once you've tried everything, maybe something will stick. And then you need to put physical activity on your calendar. It's something that we don't think we need to do, whether you use a paper calendar or a digital calendar. It's really important that you just write it down. And then write down what type of physical activity you're going to do and if you need to go somewhere for that physical activity. So often I utilize a digital calendar. I'll put a Google Calendar little notification that reminds me that I'm going to the gym today to do yoga. So therefore I need to leave the house at so many minutes so that I'm not late for class, that I can have time to change my clothes. So you want to make sure that you build all of that into your schedule so you don't have those excuses. And if you're going for a run or a walk, how far, how long. If you have all of that information written down in in your calendar, or if you have all of it written down somewhere, then you'll be able to refer back to that later, and it will remind you and keep you more accountable. So being specific in what you write down, not just workout. Maybe it's like lift weights, or maybe it's running today or yoga tomorrow. So make sure you're being really specific when you write stuff down. And then using that positive self-talk. So as you start your physical activity journey, you are going to have some hiccups. You are going to skip some days. Maybe you do even find that you have an injury from a type of physical activity that you participate in, and you have to stop. So take your time, tell yourself you're doing a good job. Do not feel discouraged by those days when you can't make physical activity happen, and be gentle with yourself, and then reward yourself for the times when you stick with your plan. Now, in the case of weight management, I wouldn't reward myself with a piece of cake or a chocolate, but you can reward yourself with something else. I love to reward myself with new workout clothes. So that could be something that might encourage you as well. And then you want to make sure that you're mindful when you're being physically active. It's something that's very important that you practice being in the moment and focus on your body and how you feel during physical activity. Especially if you're starting physical activity, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on in your body and with your body as you're moving. This will help you prevent injury. So if you're being really mindless, especially if you're starting maybe lifting weights, or you're starting a dancing program where you're doing a lot of movement, then you may find that you do hurt yourself more often because you're not paying attention to your body, because your body will definitely tell you what it can and cannot do. And then take the time to enjoy the benefits of physical activity. Remember those benefits of having really good quality sleep. Maybe you don't feel as anxious. Maybe you have a little bit more control over the breath. One of the great benefits I found as I started doing a lot more yoga is that I don't run into things as often. So, you've got this great balance. If you're older and you're working to make sure that you're mobile as you age, those squats that no one loves to do, those are going to keep you independent and out of a nursing home, because you can get up out of your chair, you can go to the bathroom, you can get out of the bed, because you're using those major muscle groups. So make sure that you enjoy those benefits of being active. And then, maybe just an improved mood is that benefit. So how much physical activity is enough? And this is always something that people want to know. So adults need at least, so this is kind of the bare minimum. So when you're starting your journey at your bare minimum, this is where you want to get to before you move on to for greater health benefits. So 150 minutes every week, which kind of equates to 30 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate intensity physical activity. This would be like a brisk walk. If you're someone who maybe does vigorous activity, so you're going to get a little bit more benefit from that vigorous activity, that's 75 minutes every week, which is kind of 4 days a week with about 20-ish minutes of jogging or running. So you really want to break this up throughout the week, and you want to make sure that you do it in at least increments of 10 minutes. And in addition to that, you want to add 2 days of weight-bearing exercises. So whether it's actually lifting physical objects or doing things like squats and push-ups and crunches, but you want to work those major muscle groups. And then if you want your greater benefit, it's 300 minutes every week, which is 60 minutes for 5 days a week, or 150 minutes of vigorous activity, jogging or running maybe, and that would be 30 minutes 5 days a week. And again, still keeping with that at least 2 days of weight training or weight bearing exercises. So kind of what's the difference, or how do you tell your intensity level? And I like the talk test. So with light intensity, you should be able to sing. So that doesn't mean that everybody can sing, but what it means is that you should be able to. You should be able to sing along with whatever song you hear in your earbuds. And then your moderate intensity, you're going to be able to carry on a conversation, but you won't be able to sing. And then vigorous intensity, you're going to just be too out of breath. Maybe you can answer questions yes or no, but carrying on a conversation is going to be a little bit difficult. So just know how hard you feel that you are working is basically your perceived exertion. And that's a way to be mindful of your body and how you feel overall while you're doing your physical activity. So you want to make sure that you're mindful of how you feel and checking out that perceived exertion, and remembering not to overexert yourself right out of the gate. We have lots of physical activity programs here at the Extension office. If you feel interested or want to try something, want to reach out to me and talk a little bit more about how to start your physical activity journey, I would love to help you. You can always contact me here at the Extension office or shoot me an email, and all of that information is on our website. So I told you I would tell you what's the best activity for what. So what is the best exercise for anxiety and stress? So research shows that yoga and Tai Chi are going to be your best for anxiety and stress. And that's going to be because they teach you how to take control of your breath and your heart, so that you're able to slow down those breaths and that heart rate. And so basically that's teaching you how to control your body a little bit better. It also helps you to find a way to meditate and focus in the present moment. So that's why yoga would be the best for stress and anxiety. And then for depression, aerobics or any type of aerobic activity like running or walking, where you're getting your heart rate up, and that's going to really release those feel-good chemicals and allow you to kind of combat that depression. And that's all we have for our physical activity stress management webinar today. I will remind you that we have a mindfulness webinar coming up on May 18th at noon. We will be live here on YouTube and Zoom. If you like to log in, you can meet us, or you can register for this program. We'll send you some emails to remind you that we're going live, and all of the handouts and stuff will also be emailed to you if you sign up through Eventbrite. And I thank you for joining us today.